My husband let his friends disrespect me, so I divorced him and let them disrespect him instead. I am completely and utterly done. After 8 years of marriage, I finally left 3 weeks ago and I am not looking back. My husband can marry his friends if he loves them that much, but before anyone says I was just looking for an excuse to divorce, I want to explain exactly why I am done with him. My husband reconnected with his college friends about 3 years ago, when one of them moved back to our city. Suddenly, our house became the unofficial hangout spot every other weekend. At first I didn't mind. I even tried to be the cool wife. I made snacks, joined their game nights, laughed at their jokes, and thought I was supporting his friendships and making him happier. That lasted about 2 months before I realized what kind of people they really were. One of his friends made a comment about my weight during a poker night. I had gained maybe 15 pounds during lockdown, like a lot of people who were stress eating and stuck at home. The comment was something about how I should probably skip the potatoes I was eating. My husband laughed at the time, like it was the funniest joke in the world. He genuinely laughed as if it were the most hilarious thing he'd ever heard. I felt my face heat up, but I tried to let it go in the moment because I didn't want to cause a scene in front of everyone. Later that night, after they left, I pulled him aside and told him the comment had hurt me and that I didn't like him laughing at me. He told me I was being too sensitive and that the guys were just joking, and that I needed to learn how to take a joke. That should have been my first sign to leave, but I convinced myself he had just drunk too much and hadn't realized how it sounded. After that, the jokes became a regular thing. Another one of his friends commented on what I was wearing every time I came downstairs to grab something, asking things like whether I was auditioning for a documentary about homeless people or wondering out loud if I owned a mirror. A different friend made jokes about me being high maintenance every time I asked my husband for help with something around the house, like fixing a faucet that had been leaking for weeks. This guy would groan and say something about how demanding I was. My husband either laughed or stayed silent. He never told them to shut up, never defended me, never said that talking about his wife that way wasn't okay. He just allowed it, week after week, until I had enough and finally said something. After a few months of this, I stopped making food, stopped joining their hangouts, stayed upstairs in our bedroom when they came over, or went out with my own friends. My husband noticed pretty quickly and asked what was going on. I told him directly that his friends were disrespectful assholes and that he was enabling them by saying nothing. He got defensive and said I was trying to control who he spent time with, that I was being dramatic over harmless jokes. He said his friends were important to him and that I was making things difficult for no reason. That argument lasted days. He kept bringing it up, saying I was unreasonable and that if the comments bothered me so much I should just ignore them. I pointed out that maybe his friends simply shouldn't make disrespectful comments about his wife in her own home, because that wasn't just offensive to me, it was also disrespectful to him. Instead, he said I was being a sensitive baby and that everyone jokes like that. I told him no, actually, respectful people don't mock their friends' partners to their faces. He stopped talking to me for 3 days after that. He was more offended by me than by his friend's behavior. Things got worse after that fight. One day I came home early from visiting my sister and found them in my home office, using my desk for their game night because apparently it had better lighting than the living room. They had moved my things, notes I was organizing, papers I needed, my laptop, and shoved everything aside. They were using my expensive office chair that I bought specifically for my back problems. There were beer rings on my desk where they hadn't even bothered to use coasters. I lost it. I told all of them to get out of my office immediately, including my husband. My husband asked what the problem was, and I told him he and his friends were the damn problem. I pointed out the mess they'd made and asked if he really didn't see any issue with invading my personal workspace without asking. He told me to calm down because it wasn't a big deal and they would clean it up. I said the problem was that they shouldn't have been there in the first place. He rolled his eyes and told me I was overreacting like always. A few weeks later, his laptop was open on the kitchen counter one morning. I wasn't snooping at first, I was just walking by to make coffee, when a notification popped up from his group chat and I saw my name in the preview. Of course I stopped and read it, because I wanted to know what they were saying about me. I opened the chat and started scrolling. There was an ongoing conversation entirely devoted to mocking me. The group might as well have been called Let's Make Fun of OP. One friend called me a buzzkill who ruined every get-together. Another shared a meme comparing me to a cartoon villain, basically Maleficent. A third said my husband was whipped for even pretending to care about my opinions. That part actually made me laugh, because if he were whipped, at least he wouldn't be letting them disrespect me. The worst part wasn't what they said, it was what my husband said. He didn't defend me or tell them to stop, he joined in. He mocked his own wife, called me a nag because he had to deal with my moods all the time, complained that I didn't want to have fun anymore and that I made everything difficult. He told them I was becoming a problem and that he didn't know how to handle me. Of course I was becoming that way when I was the center of their jokes. Maybe if they'd tried being kind, I wouldn't have been in that state. I took screenshots of everything, closed the laptop, and went about my day like nothing had happened. I was so done that I wasn't even angry. I already knew what I was going to do and planned to follow it exactly. I opened a separate bank account the following week that he didn't know about and started diverting part of my income there. We'd always kept our finances mostly separate anyway, with individual accounts and a joint account for household expenses. He never paid attention to how much I made or where my money went, so he didn't notice. I also started researching what a divorce would look like. When the holidays came, he wanted to throw a party for his friends. I told him I wasn't going to help organize or participate, that he could do whatever he wanted, but I would be going out that night. He threw a tantrum about how I didn't support him and was trying to ruin his plans. I told him I wasn't stopping him from having his party, I just wouldn't be there. He called me selfish and asked if I was sleeping with another guy. His friends came to the party. One of them brought his new girlfriend, who was actually kind to me before I left that night. When I came back late, she was still there helping clean up. She pulled me aside and asked if I was okay, saying she'd noticed how my husband's friends treated me earlier and that it was very uncomfortable to watch. I explained what had been happening. I don't know if she stayed his girlfriend after that. I decided to give my husband one last chance after the new year. I sat him down when we were both home and showed him some of the screenshots from the group chat. I told him exactly how his friends made me feel and how his silence hurt more than their insults. I told him I needed him to set boundaries with his friends and actually defend me when they disrespected me in our own home. He got angry, not at them, but at me. He was so focused on the fact that I'd read his messages, that all the disrespect from his friends was apparently irrelevant. I pointed out that his laptop was open and the notification had popped up with my name. He said I still shouldn't have clicked. I asked if he was really more upset that I'd seen the messages than about what he and his friends were saying about me. Then he complained that I was trying to isolate him from his friends, that I was forcing him to choose, and that it wasn't fair. I asked him directly what it said about him as a husband if his friends disrespected his wife and he did nothing. He told me I was being manipulative and that relationships require compromise, and that I wasn't willing to give on anything. I told him this had nothing to do with compromise and that so far I hadn't seen any compromise from him. He said I always had an answer for everything and that he was tired of fighting about it. At least I gave him a chance, and he wasted it. We were done. I spent the first weeks preparing to leave. I saved more money in my separate account, started working out because I needed to feel strong and in control of something, and started seeing a therapist on my own to make sure I wasn't crazy for feeling the way I did. Then his birthday came around and his friends threw him a party at our house, apparently because no one else has a damn place to host anything. Everyone always used my husband's house. I came back from running errands and found them all there. He hadn't told me about the party at all. I walked in carrying groceries and one of his friends immediately commented that I was finally showing up in my own house and asked if I'd gotten lost at the mall. Everyone laughed. My husband laughed. I told him I was still waiting for his brain to show up somewhere. He didn't like my response, neither did the friend who made the comment, or the rest of them, including my husband. But I was not there to worry about the feelings of a group of grown men who found it entertaining to mock a woman. I left the groceries on the counter, went upstairs, packed the essentials into a suitcase, including clothes, toiletries, and important documents I had already gathered, and then came back downstairs with my bag. They were laughing, most likely at another joke about me or someone else, and they fell silent when they saw me. In front of all of them, I looked at my husband and told him I was done and that he would hear from someone regarding the divorce. He looked surprised, as if he genuinely had not seen it coming after everything that had happened. One of his friends had the nerve to say I was being dramatic. I looked at him and told him he was extremely pathetic for a grown man whose best years were clearly behind him. Then I left and drove to a friend's house. My husband tried calling and texting for days, and I ignored everything. Eventually, I sent him a message saying that all communication had to go through the appropriate channels and that he was not to contact me directly. He replied with a long message saying I was being ridiculous and that we needed to talk about this like adults. I replied that I had tried to have several adult conversations, but I realized that staying married to someone who behaved like a child and spent his time drinking and smoking with his friends was no longer acceptable to me. I stayed with my friend for about a week while I figured out my next steps. I had already done most of the preparation, so everything moved quickly. I filed for divorce, and the papers were served to him at his workplace, which I know embarrassed him because he sent me multiple angry messages about it. He was convinced it was unnecessary and that I was only trying to embarrass him. I was very tempted to respond that embarrassment was nothing compared to the many humiliations I endured from his friends, but my lawyer advised zero contact so as not to complicate the process, so I listened. He showed up at my friend's house on Valentine's Day with flowers. My friend opened the door and told him I did not want to see him and that he needed to leave or she would call the authorities. He left the flowers on the step. I threw them away without even looking at them. Weeks of verbal mistreatment and emotional manipulation are not fixed with flowers. I was not about to run back as if nothing had happened. I signed the lease for my own apartment a few weeks after filing for divorce. Everything in it is mine. My belongings were moved out while he was at work. I organized everything in advance with a few friends who helped me load it all. I left nothing behind that mattered to me. I took my things and left him with the house and his memories. He called me 17 times that night when he got home and saw half the house empty. I blocked his number after the third call. The rest came from other numbers, most likely his friends. He tried contacting me on social media, so I blocked him there as well. He sent emails that I deleted without reading and sent straight to spam, which felt appropriate, because just like I do not want unwanted advertisements, I also do not want messages from my ex that raise my blood pressure. I heard through someone we both knew that the girlfriend of one of his friends left him after he made a disrespectful comment comparing her to me. She was not the same woman who spoke to me at my house. Apparently, she confronted him and told him that he either treated her with respect or the relationship was over. I do not know how he responded, but the outcome is clear. Fortunately for her, they were not married, and ending the relationship was much easier. The divorce was expected to be finalized in about 2 months. We did not have children or shared property to argue over. The place we lived in was rented and in his name. I took what was mine, and he kept what was his. We divided the rest fairly. I did not ask for anything beyond what I was legally entitled to. I did not want his money or his belongings. I only wanted distance from him and his friends. I am now in my own place and in a much better mental state. I work out 3 days a week and genuinely enjoy it. I spend time with friends who prefer talking about our own lives rather than mocking their partners. From what I hear, my ex is miserable. His friends are still around, at least for now, but they have started making jokes about his divorce. I am sure they find it amusing. I can imagine his reaction when they laugh at him. The same people who helped ruin his marriage are now mocking him for losing it. The same people he chose over me are treating him the way they treated me. That feels like poetic justice. I regret not leaving the first time he laughed, but I also did not want to be someone who walked away without trying. I am at peace knowing I gave him multiple chances. I leave with a clear conscience. Update 1. This update was posted about 6 weeks ago, and the support was overwhelmingly positive. Yes, there were comments accusing me of looking for an excuse to end my marriage, but those opinions usually come from people who either mistreat their partners or tolerate being mistreated themselves. In either case, I do not recommend staying in that kind of relationship. The divorce was finalized 3 days ago. I expected to feel sadness, but instead it felt calm. He did not contest anything, likely because his pride was too wounded to prolong the process. Signing the papers felt like removing a heavy weight I had been carrying for years. I celebrated quietly with an expensive lunch. A few days later, the girlfriend of one of his friends contacted me, and we met for coffee. She told me she had left her boyfriend as well. She also shared that my ex has been telling people I left without warning and that he had no idea there were problems. Even some of his friends are tired of hearing him talk about it constantly. We ended up becoming friends because we had both been involved with people who behaved poorly. Apparently, one of his friends later made a joke about him being better off without a spouse, and my ex finally snapped and realized too late that his friends had destroyed his marriage. Still, he has not fully taken responsibility for allowing it to happen. The group has been falling apart, and he is now largely alone. He has tried dating, but nothing has lasted. Update 2, some things have changed, and others have remained the same. The drama involving my ex and his former friend group continues. I will call him Nick for simplicity. I need to admit that I had someone inside his group keeping me informed. This person had defended me in the past and eventually stepped away from the group entirely. The group briefly reunited at Nick's house, where a conflict involving infidelity came to light through careless jokes. The situation escalated into a physical altercation, and neighbors contacted the authorities. Several people were injured, and some were taken into custody. The property was heavily damaged, including broken walls, windows, and water damage from a burst pipe. The total cost of repairs reached nearly $12,000. Nick was held responsible and paid to avoid legal action. He was later removed from the property. The group has since fractured completely. From a distance, the chaos might seem dramatic, but it only confirmed that leaving was the right decision. I have not spoken to Nick in a long time, and the person who kept me informed has stepped away from all of it as well. I do not expect there to be any further updates.